I think about, man, I have to perform songs every single night or every other night.
I think about, man, I have to perform songs every single night or every other night. Everyone knows Bruno Mars, the performer, but nobody knew the real Bruno, the kid who performed 1,000 shows before age 10. The teenager who slept in abandoned zoos. The man who lost everything to gambling. At 39, Bruno decided to tell the whole story. Not just about the money he owes, not just about Jessica walking away, but about the childhood trauma that drove him to fame, the addiction that almost killed his career, and the dark family secret he's carried for decades. What he revealed will change everything. Bruno Mars was just 4 years old when most kids were still learning to read. While others played with toys, he was already performing 2 shows a night, 5 days a week. His family had a musical act in Wiki and he became their star. They called him Little Elvis because he wore a tiny glitter jumpsuit and copied Elvis Presley's moves like he was born to do it. He was so good that in 1990 at just 5, he stole the spotlight at the Aloha Bowl halftime show in front of 40,000 people. At 6, he appeared on the Arsenio Hall show. Then he had a small role in the movie Honeymoon in Vegas in 1992 and made $600 for 1 day's work. He joked later that it was his first Vegas residency. Before he even turned 10, he had performed nearly 1,000 shows. That kind of start builds something deep inside. Maybe that's why years later when he was rehearsing for the Super Bowl halftime show, he said it felt like recess. But life didn't stay that shiny for long. When Bruno was 12, his parents divorced and the family act ended. Suddenly, there was no stage, no lights, and no money. Bruno, his dad, and his brothers slept wherever they could. Sometimes in a yellow '93 Cadillac, sometimes on rooftops in Wiki, and even once in an abandoned bird zoo where peacocks screamed all night. They didn't have a real bathroom, so they'd sneak into hotel pools just to take a shower. Dinner was often just Spam musubi from 7-Eleven. For 5 months, they had no electricity. He practiced guitar by moonlight because they couldn't afford amps. At school, kids teased him for wearing thrift store clothes, but Bruno kept pushing. He earned $75 a night impersonating Michael Jackson so he could pay for demo tapes and bus fare. That struggle made him tough. In 2003, music labels heard his demo and said he should be the next Ricky Martin. They wanted him to sing in Spanish. Even though he didn't write in Spanish, he didn't want that. He didn't want to be a label's idea of a Latin artist. So, he picked a name that came from childhood, Bruno. It was after a big wrestler named Bruno Sammartino. And he added Mars. Why? Because a girl once told him he was so confident you must be from Mars. When he moved to Los Angeles in June 2003, he was 18. He stepped off the plane with only $600, 3 demo CDs, and the name Bruno Mars written on his luggage tag. In his first year, he went through 4 places to live, including a $40 a night motel on Sunset and a cramped Koreatown studio shared with 6 other guys. To survive, he lied his way into a DJ job on Van New York Boulevard, even though he had never touched DJ equipment. He got fired after 2 nights, but the $75 he made helped him keep his phone from getting shut off. That summer, there were weeks when he ate nothing but 99-cent tacos from Jack in the Box. In February 2004, Madone offered him a deal. It was only 3 pages long. Bruno joked that he'd seen breakfast menus thicker than that. The label didn't know what to do with him. They wanted a Latin pop singer. 9 months later, they dropped him without releasing a single song. It was humiliating. He had already told his family back home that he got signed, but that failure turned out to be lucky. Another artist dropped by Madone at the same time was Philip Lawrence. The two became friends. They promised each other they would make music that record labels couldn't ignore. By 2006, Bruno and Philip were broke but driven. They wrote music in the back of Philip's beat-up '99 Toyota Corolla parked outside a small studio in Hollywood. Ari Levine ran the studio. He had gear. Bruno and Philip had ideas. They'd buy him burritos from 7-Eleven as payment. Whenever a chord or beat felt good, they'd shout, "That's a SME." That became their name, the Smezingtons. They worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, analyzing hit songs and learning how to write their own. They studied more than 1,000 songs before even releasing one. Then Bruno's sister, Hey, stepped in. She was working in fashion in West Hollywood and slipped one of his demo CDs to a guy named Mike Lynn. Mike worked for Dr. Dre. At first, he almost tossed the CD because the voice sounded weird, like a chipmunk. But at 43 seconds in, Bruno hit a high note that made Mike stop and rewind. He flew Bruno out for a meeting at Record One Studios. They didn't offer a deal, but the fact that someone important had noticed gave Bruno a real boost. In LA, being seen by the right person can change everything. To survive, they sold a song they had written for themselves called Lost to Menudo for $20,000. It was just enough to avoid getting kicked out of their place. But their big break came when they wrote the chorus for Florida's Right Round. The song hit #1 and sold 636,000 downloads in its first week. That was a digital record at the time. Then they wrote Bobo's Nothing on You and it was another hit. By the time Bruno released Just the Way You Are in 2010, songs he helped create had already sold more than 15 million downloads for other people. Bruno Mars didn't explode onto the scene overnight. His solo journey began with a Blink and You Miss It EP called It's Better If You Don't Understand. It dropped on May 11, 2010 with barely any attention, just 13 minutes long, only 4 songs, and by the end of 2011, it had sold just 27,000 copies in the US. It looked small, forgettable even. But hidden in that short EP were songs that would become the backbone of something much bigger. Just 5 months later, he released Doo Waps and Hooligans on October 2010. That one hit like a bomb. Made on a budget of $70,000 with no borrowed samples, the album went 7x platinum in the US and crossed 15 million global sales by 2020. In the UK alone, it stayed on the official albums chart for 400 weeks straight. That's nearly 8 years, longer than Abbey Road or even Thriller. Then came the singles. His debut, Just the Way You Are, entered the Billboard Hot 100 on 7th of August, 2010 and hit #1 only 8 weeks later. It stayed on the chart for 48 weeks and went 13x platinum. In the US alone, it sold 6.7 million downloads, landing it among the top 25 digital tracks ever. Then came Grenade. It pulled in 559,000 downloads during its peak week. That was the 8th biggest weekly total in music history at the time. It didn't just go to #1 in the US. It topped charts in 15 countries. And it didn't stop there. Between January and March 2011, Grenade hit #1 on Billboard 3 different times, something only 5 other songs have ever done. By March 2011, Bruno had 2 songs that were each certified over 5 million in US sales. The only other artist to do that before him was Lady Gaga. The music industry noticed. The Grammys gave him 7 nominations in his rookie run, including Album and Record of the Year. No male solo debut had earned that since Lauryn Hill. He didn't win the biggest categories, but he did walk away with Best Male Pop Vocal for Just the Way You Are. He was only 25 and the youngest man to win that award since Stevie Wonder in 1974. Soon after, Billboard named him their top Hot 100 artist. The IFBI called him the best-selling global artist of 2011, even beating Adele's Late Year Surge. But he wasn't done. In October 2012, Locked Out of Heaven came out. It started slow, entering the charts at number 34. Then it climbed. Within 11 weeks, it hit #1 and stayed there for 6 straight weeks. From 22 to December 2012 to 26th of January, 2013. That made Bruno the first solo male artist since Bobby Vinton in 1964 to score 4 Hot 100 numbered ones in his first 2 years. Even Michael Jackson didn't do that. Sales kept pace, too. The track hit 1 million US downloads in just 10 weeks and eventually went 10x platinum. Spotify streams later climbed past 1.8 billion. critics didn't see it coming. Rolling Stone called it the police revival nobody ordered but everyone needed. That reggae rock beat broke up the EDM monotony that had taken over the charts. In less than 4 minutes, Bruno shifted the entire sound of pop radio. At first, Unorthodox Jukebox wasn't meant to be wild. The label expected a tight, catchy dance album, but Bruno and his team secretly expanded the vision. They stretched the budget and dabbled in 9 different genres. From the disco shimmer of Treasure to the bold sensual rock of Gorilla and even reggae with Show Me, the label panicked. One memo warned that radio wouldn't play an album this chaotic. Bruno didn't back down. He even gave up 4% of his future royalties to pay for live horns and vintage gear. The risk worked. Within a year, the album had moved 6 million copies worldwide. Critics were stunned. Spin magazine said it felt like flipping through a jukebox at 3 a.m. chaotic but magnetic. And Bruno's genre-blending blueprint would later be copied by artists like Dua Lipa and Harry Styles. The 2014 Grammys brought more fireworks. Unorthodox Jukebox won Best Pop Vocal Album and 2 other awards. Engineers revealed that each song used more than 120 individual audio tracks, the most of any nominee that year, even more than Daft Punk's Random Access Memories. That same night, during his Gorilla performance, someone filed a complaint to the FCC over a 0.6-second shot of Bruno thumping his chest. It was meant to mimic a gorilla. No fine was issued, but it did earn him a spot in the 2015 Guinness World Records for the shortest televised act to trigger an obscenity review. After the Grammys, sales spiked. Unorthodox Jukebox shot up 171% on the Billboard 200. That was one of the biggest Grammy Week boosts since Alanis Morissette in the 9s. Then came Uptown Funk. It started as a jam session on 1st May 2014 in a makeshift studio. The first version was captured on a voice memo that Mark Ronson still keeps stored in his inbox. The final song took 11 writers, got tangled in 5 lawsuits, and finally dropped on 10th of November, 2014. It went straight to number 1 and stayed there for 14 weeks from January 17th to 18th of April, 2015. That was the longest number 1 streak of the decade until Old Town Road came along. The song sold 300,000 downloads per week at its peak and hit 15 million daily streams around the world. In the UK, it passed 1 million sales in 10 weeks, becoming the fastest-selling jazz-influenced single since I Feel Good in 1965. People were obsessed. Delta Airlines even reported a 37% increase in first-class drink orders the month it became their boarding song. Someone at the airline called it Uptown Drunk. The BBC even us.